One free weekend is genuinely all it takes to go from zero to skilled. Let's prove it with 60 crafts. If you want ideas on any of these crafts, let me know and I'll surely make a video on that. 1. Watercolor painting. Watercolor is one of the most forgiving art mediums for a beginner, and that's not something people expect to hear. The assumption is that those soft, atmospheric washes look effortless because the painter is incredibly skilled, but the truth is the opposite. Watercolor rewards looseness. It rewards you letting the water do what it wants. A basic pan set, a couple of round brushes, and watercolor paper are all you need to start. 2. Acrylic painting on canvas. Acrylics are the most beginner accessible of all paint mediums because they dry fast, they're water soluble while wet, they work on almost any surface, and mistakes can be painted over in minutes. A basic starter set, a few tubes of primary colors plus white and black, 2 or 3 brushes, and a canvas is enough for a full weekend of learning. Saturday, learn color mixing and basic brushwork. Sunday, paint a simple composition, a vase of flowers, a landscape from a photo, a bold abstract. 3. Pour painting or fluid art. Pour painting, where you mix acrylic paint with a pouring medium, layer multiple colors in a cup, and pour them across a canvas to create organic flowing patterns, is a craft where your skill level is almost irrelevant to the beauty of the outcome. The chemistry of the paint and medium does the work. Adding a few drops of silicone oil to your mix creates the cell formations that make pour paintings look cosmic and alive. The variables you control are your color palette, your pour technique, and how you tilt the canvas to direct the flow. 4. Macrame plant hanger. The square knot and the half hitch are the 2 foundational macrame knots, and you can learn both in about 30 minutes. Once you know them, a basic plant hanger using 5mm single-strand cotton cord on a wooden dowel or ring takes about an hour to 2 hours to complete. By Sunday evening of a craft weekend, it's completely realistic to have made 2 or 3 hangers in different styles. 5. Macrame wall hanging, the step up from the plant hanger. A small wall hanging worked on a 12-inch wooden dowel with a series of square knots, spiral half hitches, and a fringe finish is a weekend project that results in a finished piece of home decor you can actually hang on your wall. The design possibilities open up significantly when you move from a round hanging structure to a flat wall format because you can control the composition more deliberately: how wide, how long, where the knots cluster, where the fringe falls. Color dipping or dip dyeing the finished piece adds another creative dimension that takes minutes but changes the entire look. 6. Basic crochet granny squares. Granny squares are where most people fall in love with crochet, and that's not an accident. A granny square is a small, self-contained unit, typically worked in rounds from the center outward, that teaches you how to chain, how to make double crochets, how to work in the round, and how to join new yarn. None of those skills require prior experience. A weekend of focused practice produces a satisfying stack of squares that can eventually be joined into a blanket, a bag, or a pillow cover. 7. Basic knitting garter stitch scarf. A garter stitch scarf knit flat back and forth using nothing but the knit stitch is the classic starter knitting project, and it earns that reputation honestly. There is exactly 1 stitch to learn. You cast on, you knit row after row, you cast off. The resulting fabric is a pleasant, ridged texture that works beautifully for scarves, washcloths, and simple home items. By Sunday evening of a knitting weekend, someone starting from scratch should have completed a short scarf or a substantial swatch. 8. Polymer clay earrings. Polymer clay, sold under brands like Sculpey and Fimo, bakes hard in a regular domestic oven at around 130 degrees Celsius or 265 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the brand and the thickness of the piece. The clay is soft and workable at room temperature. A weekend of polymer clay earrings making involves learning to condition the clay, working it until soft and pliable, rolling it flat, cutting shapes with cutters or a blade, adding texture with stamps or household objects, piercing holes for earring hooks, baking, sanding, sealing, and assembling with earring hardware. 10. Air dry clay bowls and pinch pots. Air dry clay requires no kiln, no oven, and no specialist equipment. You work it with your hands and it cures to a firm, paintable surface over 24 to 72 hours, depending on the thickness of the piece. A weekend of air dry clay work, making small pinch pots, coil-built bowls, and decorative trinket dishes, produces a satisfying collection of objects that feel both primitive and refined. Sand the cured surface smooth with fine sandpaper. Paint with acrylic Acrylics, seal with a matte or gloss varnish. 11. Resin coasters. A set of 4 resin coasters poured in circular silicone molds with alcohol ink swirls, mica powder, and dried botanical inclusions is a satisfying, achievable weekend project. Friday evening, gather your materials and do test pours. Saturday, pour your coasters and let them cure overnight. Sunday morning, demold, sand edges if needed, apply rubber feet, and photograph your finished set. Resin coasters are one of the most consistently purchased handmade home accessories across Etsy, craft fairs, and TikTok Shop. 12. Candle making, soy container candles. A basic soy wax container candle, wax melted in a double boiler, fragrance oil added at the correct temperature, typically around 85 degrees Celsius or 185 degrees Fahrenheit for most soy waxes, poured into a glass jar around a pre-tabbed cotton wick, is a craft with very few failure points once you understand the process. Wick sizing for your specific jar diameter is the variable that requires the most attention, and that's solved through a burn test, which you can begin over the same weekend. 12. Soap making, melt and pour. Melt and pour soap using a pre-made glycerin soap base that you melt, color, scent, and pour onto molds is the entry point to soap making that doesn't require lye handling or saponification knowledge. The base is already saponified. You're a designer, not a chemist at this stage. Saturday, learn the basics: melting temperature, how different colorants behave in glycerin base, how much fragrance oil to add. Sunday, make your final batch with confidence. 13. Bath bomb making. The basic bath bomb formula, baking soda, citric acid, a binding oil like coconut or sweet almond oil, fragrance or essential oil, and color is straightforward enough to master in a morning. The critical variable is moisture. Too much liquid added too quickly triggers the fizzle reaction prematurely and your bombs crack or crumble. Saturday morning, learn the formula and the dry versus wet ingredient mixing order. Saturday afternoon, make your final batch with confidence. 14. Beeswax wrap making. A beeswax wrap is a piece of cotton fabric infused with a mixture of beeswax, pine resin, and jojoba oil, creating a pliable, self-adhering, reusable alternative to plastic food wrap. The process involves laying cut fabric pieces on a baking sheet, shaving or sprinkling beeswax pellets over the surface, and melting in an oven at around 110 degrees Celsius or 230 degrees Fahrenheit for a few minutes, then spreading the melted wax evenly with a brush and letting it set. The whole process for a single wrap takes about 10 minutes. A weekend produces a full set in multiple sizes. 15. Screen printing on t-shirts. Screen printing is one of those crafts that looks industrial and complex, but becomes very manageable once you understand the photo emulsion process. A basic setup, a wooden frame with mesh stretched across it, photo emulsion, a design printed on transparency film, and a UV light source to expose the screen is all you need to start. Saturday, prepare and expose your screen. Sunday, print your first run of shirts. The squeegee technique takes an hour or so to get comfortable with, but the results, crisp, professional-looking printed graphics on fabric, are enormously satisfying and directly sellable. 16. Lino printing or block printing. Carving a design into a lino block or a rubber carving block with a set of V-shaped and U-shaped gouges, inking the surface with a brayer and pressing it onto paper or fabric is one of the most rewarding printmaking processes available to beginners. The carving requires patience and a light touch. You're working in negative space, removing material to create the white areas of your design. Saturday, sketch and transfer your design and start carving. Sunday, print your edition on paper, fabric, or cards. Shibori dyeing. Shibori is a Japanese indigo dyeing technique that uses folding, twisting, clamping, stitching, or binding fabric before immersing it in dye to create resist patterns. The bound or folded areas resist the dye and remain light, while the exposed areas absorb the deep indigo color. The basic itajime technique, folding fabric accordion style and clamping it between two identical shapes before dyeing, produces geometric snowflake-like patterns that look complex but are entirely determined by the fold geometry. Tie-dye. Tie-dye had a significant mainstream resurgence in 2020, and it has maintained steady interest through 2025 and into 2026, specifically in adult, refined versions using earthy and pastel palettes rather than the classic rainbow primaries. The basic technique, twisting, folding, or bunching fabric and securing it with rubber bands before applying dye with squeeze bottles, is genuinely simple. The variables are your dye concentration, how you fold the fabric, and how long you let it set before washing. Natural dyeing with plants. A step beyond synthetic fiber reactive dyes, natural dyeing uses plants, flowers, bark, and kitchen scraps to produce color on natural fibers. Onion skins produce deep gold. Avocado pits and skins produce a dusty mauve pink. Black beans produce soft blue-gray. The process requires a mordant, typically alum, which bonds the dye to the fiber before dyeing, and natural fibers like wool, silk, or cotton mordanted with alum. A weekend of natural dyeing is simultaneously a chemistry lesson, a cooking project, and a craft practice. Origami. The Japanese art of paper folding needs no introduction, but its accessibility is frequently underestimated by adults who associate it with childhood and assume it plateaus quickly. It doesn't. A weekend of intentional origami practice, starting with the classic crane, progressing through modular units that assemble into geometric spheres, and eventually attempting the more complex diagrams, reveals a craft with extraordinary depth. No glue, no scissors, no tools, just paper and the fold. The geometric origami tradition, specifically tessellations, polyhedra, and modular assembly, is a branch of the craft that blends mathematics and aesthetics in a way that is genuinely intellectually stimulating for anyone who enjoys both. Decoupage. Decoupage, the technique of decorating surfaces by gluing paper cutouts and sealing them with varnish, is one of the most accessible transformation crafts in existence. A plain wooden box, a glass vase, a ceramic pot, a tray, anything with a stable surface can be decoupaged. The materials are minimal: Mod Podge or a PVA glue diluted with water, paper sources, tissue paper, napkins, magazine pages, printed photographs, and a foam brush. Saturday, practice on a small object. Sunday, commit to a finished piece. Decoupage furniture upcycling. The larger scale application of decoupage applied to furniture, a side table, a chest of drawers, a wooden chair, is a weekend project with a genuinely significant visual payoff. Using decorative papers, vintage maps, botanical prints, or deconstructed paperback books as the surface treatment, decoupage furniture produces pieces that feel like boutique finds rather than thrift store rescues. The technique is the same as small-scale decoupage, resin jewelry. Using silicone jewelry molds, pendants, rings, earring shapes, and resin with mica powder, dried flowers, glitter, or foil inclusions, a weekend of resin jewelry making produces a collection of wearable pieces that photograph beautifully and sell well in the lower to mid-range of the handmade jewelry market. UV resin specifically, which cures under a UV lamp in 1 to 3 minutes, makes the weekend timeline very achievable because you're not waiting 12 to 24 hours per pour as you would with two-part epoxy. Wire wrapping. Wrapping raw crystals, tumbled stones, or glass cabochons in craft wire to create pendants is a jewelry-making technique with no soldering, no heat, and no specialist equipment beyond basic jewelry pliers. A round nose plier, flat nose plier, and wire cutters are the 3 tools. The wrapping technique itself, looping wire around a stone in a structured, decorative cage, is intuitive once you understand the basic foundation wrap that secures the stone. Friendship bracelet knotting. The knotted friendship bracelet has experienced a cultural resurgence significant enough that it has moved from childhood nostalgia into the adult craft and fashion market. The basic chevron pattern, using the forward knot and the backward knot in alternating diagonal rows, is the foundation, and it's genuinely learnable in about an hour. Embroidery floss is the material. A clipboard or tape to anchor the work is the only tool. A Saturday of practice produces a clear understanding of the knotting structure. Beaded jewelry making. Stringing beads on elastic cord, wire, or thread with a basic understanding of clasp and crimp systems is an entry-level jewelry craft that scales in complexity as quickly as you want it to. A weekend of beading starting from scratch. Saturday, learn the materials: seed beads, check glass beads, gemstone chips, findings, and the tools to work with them. Practice basic stringing and knotting. Sunday, design and make a complete set. Embroidery on fabric hoops. Hand embroidery, specifically hoop embroidery where the design is worked on fabric stretched in a wooden embroidery hoop that also serves as the display frame, is a weekend craft with a very gentle learning curve. Saturday, learn the running stitch, back stitch, satin stitch, and French knot. These 4 stitches cover the vast majority of embroidery designs. Transfer a simple botanical or animal design onto your fabric. Sunday, stitch the design, finish the hoop back neatly, and hang it. Cross-stitch. Cross-stitch, stitching X-shaped stitches on counted Aida cloth in a pattern determined by a chart, is one of the most structured and systematic textile crafts, which makes it unusually predictable in terms of learning pace. You follow the chart, each square on the chart corresponds to one stitch on the fabric. The result is entirely determined by the pattern you choose and the care of your execution. Latch hooking. Latch hooking, pulling loops of pre-cut yarn through a mesh canvas using a latch hook tool, is an extremely tactile, rhythmic craft that produces thick, plush textile pieces. It was enormously popular in the 1970s and has a dedicated modern following, driven partly by nostalgia and partly by the genuinely satisfying nature of the process. Needle felting. Needle felting, compacting wool roving into a firm, sculpted shape by repeatedly stabbing it with a barbed needle, sounds alarming until you try it, at which point it becomes one of the most meditative and addictive crafts you can do. A foam pad, a barbed felting needle, and some natural wool roving are all the materials needed. Wet felting. Wet felting uses hot soapy water and agitation to bond wool fibers together to produce flat felt fabric from raw wool. This fabric can be cut, sewn, and shaped into bags, slippers, bowls, and wall panels. A weekend of wet felting covers the fundamental process on Saturday and produces a finished functional piece on Sunday. Spin painting, applying paint to a surface mounted on a spinning mechanism, produces circular, centrifugal pour patterns that are consistently beautiful and completely unpredictable. The technique has been in professional and amateur art practice for decades, but the availability of inexpensive battery-powered spin art devices has made it very accessible. Alcohol ink art on Yupo paper. Yupo paper is a synthetic, non-porous paper that alcohol inks bead on and flow across in ways that are visually unlike any other medium. You drop inks onto the surface, use a straw to blow them, tilt the paper to direct the flow, and watch them create organic, luminous patterns with no direct control over the outcome. Rock painting. Smooth river stones or craft store stones, sealed with a white acrylic base coat and painted with fine acrylic brushes, produce small, portable pieces of art that photograph extremely well against natural backgrounds. The rock painting community is large, active, and genuinely warm. There's a whole movement around hiding painted rocks in public places for people to find, called the Kindness Rocks Project. But rocks also sell as decorative objects, paperweights, and small gifts. Pyrography, wood burning. Pyrography is the art of burning designs into wood using a heated tool. A basic pyrography pen, similar in principle to a soldering iron, but designed with interchangeable tips for different line weights and effects, heats to controlled temperatures that allow you to draw, shade, and texture burn designs onto wood surfaces. Saturday, learn temperature control, tip selection, and the basic stroke vocabulary: line strokes, stippling, shading. Leather tooling basics. Vegetable tanned leather, the type that accepts tooling and carving, can be stamped, carved, and embossed while damp to create decorative surface designs that dry permanently into the leather. Basic leather tooling stamps, floral rosettes, geometric borders, leaf shapes are pressed into dampened leather with a mallet to create a three-dimensional embossed pattern. Bookbinding, Coptic stitch. The Coptic stitch is a bookbinding technique that creates a book with an exposed spine. You can see the stitching between the signatures and a lay-flat opening. It's one of the most popular beginner bookbinding stitches because it's structural, beautiful, and achievable with minimal tools: a bookbinding needle, waxed linen thread, folded paper signatures, and 2 covers. Hand lettering and brush calligraphy. Modern brush calligraphy, using a flexible brush pen to create letter forms with thick downstrokes and thin upstrokes, is a lettering style that rewards consistent weekend practice in a very visible way. Saturday, learn the basic strokes: the oval, the underturn, the overturn, the ascending loop, the descending loop. These 5 strokes form the basis of every letter in the lowercase alphabet. Lino-cut printing on fabric. The same lino block printing technique used on paper translates directly to fabric using fabric-specific printing ink. The results are bold, graphic, and completely original. A fabric you've printed yourself has no commercial equivalent. Paper quilting. Paper quilting involves rolling, shaping, and arranging strips of paper into decorative designs. The basic shapes, a tight coil, a loose coil, a teardrop, a marquise, are all formed by rolling a strip of paper around a quilling tool or a toothpick and then pinching or pressing to create the shape. These shapes are then arranged and glued onto a background to form intricate layered designs. Quilling is slow, meditative, and produces results that look impossibly detailed relative to the simplicity of the material. Terrarium building, an open or closed glass terrarium built with a base layer of gravel for drainage, a barrier of horticultural charcoal, a layer of potting mix, and small plants appropriate to the vessel type, is a living, functional craft that bridges the creative and the botanical. The design principles are those of landscape composition, height variation, texture contrast, focal points, and negative space. Marbling paper. Traditional paper marbling uses a tray of carrageenan incised, a thick liquid surface made from seaweed extract onto which oil-based paints or specially prepared water-based marbling inks are dropped. The inks float on the surface and can be manipulated with combs, styluses, and controlled breath to create elaborate veined and swirled patterns. Silk ribbon embroidery. Silk ribbon embroidery uses narrow silk ribbon, typically 4 mm or 7 mm wide, in place of thread to create dimensional, petal-like stitches that have a lush, three-dimensional quality, utterly unlike flat thread embroidery. The ribbon catches light and shifts as it moves, giving the embroidered surface a textile depth that photographs beautifully. Punch needle, small format. Using a punch needle tool threaded with yarn or embroidery floss to push loops of fiber through a top monk's cloth or weaver's cloth backing creates a small textured textile piece with a fluffy pile on the reverse. Small format punch needle, 5 to 8 inches in an embroidery hoop, is entirely achievable in a weekend. Wax seal stamping. Wax seal stamping, melting colored wax sealing wax with a glue gun or a dedicated wax melter and pressing a brass stamp into the pooled wax while warm produces elegant decorative seals that are used on letters, envelopes, invitations, packaging, and as standalone decorative elements. Pressed flower art. Pressing flowers requires 2 to 3 weeks of patience, but pressing is not the craft you're mastering in a weekend. What you're mastering is the art of composition and arrangement using already pressed botanicals. Using pre-pressed flowers available from craft stores or your own pressed weeks earlier, you arrange and layer them on paper, card, glass, or resin surfaces to create botanical compositions. Salt dough sculpting. Salt dough, made from flour, salt, and water in roughly equal parts, is one of the oldest and most forgiving sculpting mediums in domestic craft history. It air dries or bakes in a low oven, takes acrylic paint beautifully when hard, and the material cost is essentially nothing. 48. Mosaic making. Cutting or breaking tiles, glass, crockery, or mirror pieces and setting them in tile adhesive or grout on a backing surface, a wooden board, a plant pot, a stepping stone, a mirror frame, is a weekend craft with immediate, dramatic visual results. The design principles of mosaic, the grout lines as a design element, the reflectivity of mirror and glass, the variation in texture between different tile types are intuitive once you're working with the materials. 49. Kintsugi, Japanese gold repair. Kintsugi is the Japanese art of repairing broken ceramics with lacquer mixed with gold powder, treating the break as part of the object's history rather than a flaw to be hidden. Traditional kintsugi uses urushi lacquer, a process that takes weeks. Modern kintsugi kits use an epoxy-based gold adhesive that achieves the visual and philosophical effect of the traditional technique in a weekend. 50. Suminagashi, Japanese water marbling. Suminagashi, literally floating ink, is the original Japanese water marbling technique, older than the Western carrageenan method, and uses pure sumi ink dropped onto plain water rather than a thick size. The inks are dropped in alternating rings from 2 brushes and manipulated with the breath to create concentric flowing patterns. Paper is laid on the surface and lifted. 51. Eco-printing, or botanical contact printing. Eco-printing is a natural dyeing technique where actual plant leaves and flowers are placed directly on fabric, bundled or rolled, tied, and either steamed or simmered in water to transfer their pigments directly onto the fiber as a print. The resulting prints are ghost-like botanical images, not a photograph-quality reproduction, but a soft impressionistic imprint of the actual leaf or flower that was in contact with the fabric. 52. Kumihimo braiding. Kumihimo is a Japanese braiding technique worked on a circular foam disc, a marudai in traditional practice, that produces round, flat, or square braided cords through a systematic rotation of weighted bobbins. The basic round braid, using 8 strands on a round disc, is learnable in under an hour from a diagram or tutorial and produces a beautifully structured round cord that is used for bracelets, necklaces, and decorative ties. 53. Blackwork embroidery. Blackwork is a counted embroidery technique worked in black thread on white or cream fabric, using repeating geometric fill patterns based on the grid of the fabric weave. It has a long history, recognizable in European portraiture from the 16th century as decorative embellishments on collars and cuffs. 54. Resin geode art. A large resin geode art piece poured on a wooden or canvas panel using layers of clear and pigmented resin with crushed glass, coarse glitter, and metallic mica to simulate the mineral structure of a geode cross-section is a weekend project that occupies a space between craft and fine art. Saturday, plan your palette, prepare your surface, and pour your base color. 55. Indigo vat dyeing. A pre-reduced indigo vat available in kit form that removes the historic chemistry barrier of building a fermentation vat from scratch is a weekend dye project that produces the rich, complex blues that have defined indigo-dyed textiles across cultures for thousands of years. The oxidation process, where the fabric pulled from the yellow-green vat turns blue in the open air as the indigo oxidizes, is one of the most visually dramatic and genuinely magical moments in all of textile craft. 56. Leather stamping and making a simple wallet. A basic fold-over wallet cut from vegetable tanned leather, 2 rectangular panels, holes punched along the edges, sewn together with a saddle stitch using 2 needles and wax thread, is a weekend leather project that produces a finished, usable, and genuinely premium object. 57. Miniature terrarium and a light bulb. Repurposing a large clear light bulb, carefully hollowed out, as a miniature terrarium is a fiddly, delicate weekend craft that produces an object of extraordinary charm. The challenge is the hollowing process, which requires careful removal of the interior components through the base socket and a calm enough hand not to crack the bulb. 58. Tufted coasters, punch needle. Using a punch needle, a small section of monk's cloth mounted in a hoop, and a few colors of yarn, a set of 4 tufted coasters is an achievable weekend project even for someone new to punch needle work. 59. Soap carving. A bar of plain soap, either a commercial bar or a homemade melt and pour bar allowed to fully cure, can be carved with small chisels, craft knives, and loop tools into decorative sculptural forms. Traditional soap carving produces fruit forms, apples, roses, flowers, but contemporary soap carving has expanded into geometric forms, animal figures, and abstract bas-relief designs. 60. Silver ring making with precious metal clay. Precious metal clay, known as PMC or art clay silver, is a material made from fine silver particles suspended in an organic binder. It is worked like clay, rolled, cut, shaped, textured, and joined with water as an adhesive, and then fired in a kiln or with a gas torch, burning away the binder and sintering the silver particles into pure 999 fine silver.